The United Kingdom stands on the precipice of its most severe constitutional crisis in decades. What began as murmurs of discontent within Labour's ranks has exploded into a full-scale political catastrophe, with senior figures across the political spectrum now openly discussing the once unthinkable: the dissolution of Parliament and the collapse of a sitting government. At the centre of this storm is Sir Keir Starmer, a Prime Minister whose premiership now teeters on the brink amid allegations of corruption, systemic cover-ups, and a catastrophic erosion of public trust. This is not just another political scandal, it is a fundamental test of Britain's democratic institutions. The crisis has escalated to such a degree that even the monarchy has been drawn into the fray, with King Charles reportedly consulting constitutional experts about his role in what could become an unprecedented intervention. Meanwhile, Labour councillors are resigning en masse, civil servants are leaking classified documents, and public anger has reached a boiling point not seen since the expenses scandal of 2009. The question is no longer whether Starmer can survive, but whether the British political system itself can withstand the shockwaves of this disaster. The origins of this crisis trace back to a series of explosive revelations that have shattered Labour's carefully cultivated image of competence and integrity. The first major blow came when leaked Treasury documents exposed the diversion of £1.2 billion in post-pandemic recovery funds to consulting firms with close ties to Labour donors. This was not a case of mismanagement, it was a deliberate, coordinated effort to funnel public money into private hands while essential services crumbled. The scale of the betrayal becomes even starker when contrasted with the government's rhetoric of fiscal responsibility and transparency. But the financial scandal was only the beginning. As journalists and opposition MPs dug deeper, a far more disturbing pattern emerged: a systemic effort to suppress damaging information, intimidate whistleblowers, and manipulate official records. Senior civil servants have come forward with allegations of being ordered to delete emails, alter reports, and even falsify data to protect the Prime Minister's image. One former Cabinet Office official described a culture of fear, where civil servants were warned that speaking out would end their careers. Another revealed that key documents related to NHS waiting times and police failures had been deliberately destroyed to avoid political embarrassment. The most damning accusation, however, concerns Labour's handling of the grooming gang scandal. Despite Starmer's background as Director of Public Prosecutions, his government has been accused of suppressing investigations into institutional failures that allowed abuse to continue unchecked. Leaked Home Office memos suggest that pressure was applied to delay or water down reports that could have exposed Labour-linked councils to criticism. For many voters, this was the final straw, a betrayal of the vulnerable in service of political self-preservation. The fallout has been swift and brutal. Public trust in the government has collapsed, with recent polls showing that 72% of Britons now believe Labour is fundamentally corrupt. Even traditionally loyal Labour strongholds have turned against the party, with councils in Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow openly defying central government directives. In some areas, local Labour branches have effectively ceased to function, as councillors resign or declare independence from the National Party. The sense of betrayal is particularly acute among working-class voters, who feel abandoned by a party they once saw as their champion. The crisis has also exposed deep fractures within Labour itself. Senior MPs, including former shadow ministers, have broken ranks to call for Starmer's resignation. Behind the scenes, there are reports of emergency meetings and frantic attempts to rally support for a leadership challenge. But the Prime Minister's allies have responded with characteristic ruthlessness, allegedly threatening rebellious MPs with deselection and smear campaigns. One Labour insider described the atmosphere as toxic, with paranoia and distrust poisoning every discussion. The situation has grown so dire that even the monarchy has been forced to intervene, albeit discreetly. Sources close to Buckingham Palace indicate that King Charles has sought urgent legal advice on the extent of his constitutional powers in the event of a government collapse. While the Crown's role is strictly ceremonial, there is growing speculation that the King could refuse royal assent to controversial legislation or even, in an unprecedented move, privately urge Starmer to step down. Such an intervention would mark a dramatic break with centuries of tradition and underscore the gravity of the crisis. Meanwhile, the economic consequences of the scandal are beginning to bite. The pound has fallen sharply against the dollar as investors flee the uncertainty, and business leaders warn of a looming crisis of confidence. Richard Walker, the CEO of Iceland Foods and a former Labour supporter, captured the mood when he accused the government of treating taxpayers like a piggy bank for cronyism. His words resonated across the country, where millions are struggling with soaring living costs and crumbling public services. The political fallout has been equally seismic. The Conservative Party, despite its own recent turmoil, has seized on Labour's implosion, with leader Rishi Sunak calling for an immediate general election. But the real threat to Labour may come from the left, as trade unions and grassroots activists abandon the party in droves. Unite, Britain's largest union, has suspended its donations to Labour and demanded a full audit of party finances. Other unions are reportedly considering similar moves, which would starve Labour of the funding it needs to fight an election. Perhaps most alarmingly, there are signs that the crisis is spreading beyond Westminster. Protest movements demanding democratic reform have sprung up across the country, with some calling for a constitutional convention to overhaul Britain's political system. Even the military has been drawn into the debate, with retired generals warning of the dangers of allowing public trust in democracy to erode further. While no one is predicting a coup, the mere fact that such discussions are happening speaks volumes about the depth of the crisis.